How you doing? We'll wait a few minutes, okay? Welcome to class. We'll wait a couple minutes for everybody to get here. There's only a total of 6 of us, so just a few more people, and then I'll start in 3 minutes. In the meantime, if you like, you can check out Canvas. We are using Practice Lab today, and I'll talk a little bit about Practice Lab. I think some of you are familiar with it, while others are not. So we'll begin in a couple minutes.
Is this the same one that we use for spring?
Yeah, but it's a different module.
Oh, okay.
They improved some stuff on there. We just met with their engineer yesterday. Also, Chris, if you're on Discord with the people from, I forgot to mention it today, but I had a company that reached out to me regarding 10 IT positions part-time, and they are in Riverside. I
Okay.
forgot to mention that if people are interested, they can send me their resume. And it just left my mind this afternoon. I don't know why, but I had asked the manager to give me more details like pay and the responsibility, but he hasn't gotten back to me. So,
Okay.
but
I'll let them know.
oh yeah, thank you, in case they're interested. And Alma's here, so she's in both class like you. So, but it's a good opportunity to obtain beginning experience. So they have 10 positions. They said that it's temporary, it could go into permanent. It is a warehouse, but you will be doing IT work. It's called EKC, and they are in Riverside near downtown. They do, I guess, for now, he tells me that it's technical support and help desk mainly. So you will be working with installing systems and troubleshooting system and helping users. So I asked for additional description of the job and the pay, but they haven't gotten back to me. So hopefully if I get more information, I'll be able to share it. Maybe they have an online application or something. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to walk you through Practice Lab today. There will be weeks that we will be doing Practice Lab only because if there's different platform that I need to use, it's just not feasible for the student to start from scratch every time. And then there will be time that we will be installing our software so we can try it technically, but you should have, you know, at least virtual machine created to test these things just for safety reasons. So Practice Lab is a cloud company that we acquired with the region, and it's used in many different security courses. Um, and for this course, we had customized the content for Practice Lab, but you do have access to exam prep. So I'm going to go into screen share and I'm going to walk you through some of the basics. If you've used Practice Lab already, you might know how to navigate again with it, but if you haven't, I want to use this opportunity to go over it, okay? So in Practice Lab, it is linked to your Canvas. So when you go into Canvas, so this week we're going to work with data acquisition. So we are going to look at how we can mount, unmount drive, looking at different types of drives. And we will start with using Linux. They use Kali Linux, and then you're going to use terminal, so you have some experience with terminal today if you haven't done that before. And so we are going to look at how we can obtain data from a specific drive using the virtual machine that's on the Cloud Lab server. Now, when you use this tool, what it's going to happen is sometime if your browser is blocking the pop-up window, you might not be able to see the actual virtual machine. So you might have to enable that, or you have to allow it to pop up so you can see. And each time it will try to open different devices. So we might have different virtual system that's running at the same time when you're connecting to this particular website. So make sure that we look at the browser security. So once you have your practice lab, you should see a button right below here. And once you click that button to connect, it's going to open up new tabs. So it would look something like this. Okay. And this is just some feature that they have implemented. So it points you to this exam prep area, and Practice Lab contains some exam preparation materials, questions and answer. So if you're interested in doing that, you have access to that resource. So I'm going to close this so I can show you. So that will be located here. There's some stuff for, so you can search for title. In the past, when I taught Security Plus, I added Security Plus. This is for the A Plus. And I did touch base with Practice Lab about some of their question content was a little bit off. So they are fixing some of the problem now. So let's say that if you want to do forensics or Cisco or something related, you can see if, let me see if they have, they might not, I might have to link it manually for you guys. But you can search for various title and you'll be able to select exam. Now, the way that they write this cloud application is they have it work best with Microsoft Edge, but not before the last update. I have a hard time accessing content from my end using the new Edge. And so now I'm using a different laptop for this particular lab to demo, but it should run on Chrome and Edge okay for most part. But if you're having issues with some browser, you might want to try a different browser. And yes, there will be time that it will slow down They mentioned that they have upgraded their servers and whatnot, but if there's a lot of students accessing it at the same time, we might run into problem, okay, where it's gonna slow down a little bit. So going back to the instructions, so this is how you can access your exercise content. If you want additional tutorial help and support, if you need to contact them because something's not working right, you can find that information using the question mark here, right? How to change your personal settings, how to use the interface, how to manage your devices, and so forth, okay? There will be times that you might need to change your settings, so you don't need to fill out this information here, but if you want, you know, device pop-ups, or if you want accessibility content, you might want to change this. If you want high contrast, you can change this by sliding that over. And then you can change your font sizes to make it larger or smaller so it's easy for you to see, and so forth. So this is the setting option. And then your report, it actually, everything is linked to our gradebook. So you can take a look at your report to see your status here, okay? So I'm gonna go back to the instructions, and then for your computer forensic, there are different stuff here, but what we're gonna do today is just a data acquisition. So now what we're gonna look at is the main instructions. So it's gonna show on the left pane, and with the data acquisition, you need to complete these tasks. So first, you are going to set up the target drive in Linux, and we're going to use terminal. We're going to create a partition. We're going to unmount first the drive, and then we're going to cut it up into a small drive. So when we say partition, basically it pertains to a section of that drive, right? We can section our 200 gig drive into smaller pieces, and just like how you would partition rooms in your house, you would divide it up into a small portion. Then what you're going to do is you are going to use that partition, and you are going to mount a folder to that partition. So whenever you would go to that folder is going to link to that drive or that section of the disk, and be able to access content there. The second part to this is we are going to acquire data using in Linux, and then we're going to use ProDiscovery Basic to be able to acquire the data that we need. So below this is your lab diagram. You will use specific system out of the three. You don't necessarily need to have all three running. It's going to tell you which system to use. So we are going to use Windows 8.1, and we are going to use the SRV01, which is Kali Linux. Okay, so you have a little bit of exposure to Linux there. So these are the two systems that you need to power on. So on the right-hand column here, you should see the system. So you simply click it on, right? And then when you're done, you can click power off. If you need to reboot or reset meaning that it's gonna wipe out everything that you've done so far and reset. Sorry, it flickers a little bit because I'm on Practice Lab. Let me just take away, okay. And then for so this is your Windows 8.1, and this is the server. So make sure that you power it on, right? So it should show green. If it shows that it's busy, it's gonna take a little bit to get set up. Okay. Now it says for the remote console, if it doesn't appear, you can switch between HTML5 and a Java client in the toolbar. So you can enable the Java content in order to do that. They try to write everything in HTML5 now, only because it's more secured, and it's working with all the browser, because with Java, you have to install the Java tools and that can create issues if you don't have the latest Java tool and so forth. So after you review, in order to get additional instruction, you simply click next, and it's going to load the next page. So your goal is to get through the 10 pages for this exercise, and you can take your time doing this. I enable it for 2 days for the due date, and then you have until later on next month when the assignment actually locked. And if it's locked, you can email me, okay? So let's start talking about file system. So in Linux OS, you can use different tools to look at file system that is not Linux, like we can look into Windows. And in Microsoft, it's able to see fat allocation table, which is the older file system. And also we want to refer to NTFS, which is the newer file system, not so new, but since Windows NT. But all the later operating system like Windows 10 or Windows 8.1, it can use NTFS, which is more secure. It would have the capability to encrypt, and it would have the capability to actually set up permissions for the folder and files. So in the Linux kernel, most of the time, if you had format your disk in fat allocation table, whether it's fat or FAT32, all OSs should be able to see it. So this is why when you get a USB drive or external hard drive, the default file system that's used is FAT, because most OS should be able to see it. And in the firmware, they have written the firmware so that way when you plug the USB in, it should be able to see it, right? But by default, FAT allocation table can be seen by Mac OS and Linux OS. So in the first task, it have you prepare the Linux file system. Okay, and when you look at the Linux file system, it's slightly different than your Windows file system. It might be ext, ext2, right? In some cases, it will be, and so for the FS file system, so there will be times that when you look at the actual graphical user interface, where you're looking at the partition table, it's going to show a little bit differently. So every operating system uses different file system. It's the way that the file is organized, right, and tracked inside that operating system. So in step 1, it have you access the 8.10 device, which we had turned on, and the server, which we turn on here. So first, what we're gonna do is you're gonna see different window that's gonna represent the virtual machine for these devices. So then what I can do is I can access the tab on my browser to see, okay, sorry. So let me get to, so now when I go to I click on the machine, I should be able to access it. So how did I do that? I actually click it on here. And then if I click on the server, it's gonna open that up, okay? If it doesn't open up, you can always click on it there, okay? So in Kali Linux, this is what you see. So you have your mouse from the outside, right? Your cursor here. And then you would have your mouse inside the actual virtual machine. So once we click in here, we can issue the username and password. So to start, it have you access the account root. And if you're not familiar with Linux, right, root is like the administrator account to Windows. It's powerful. It's the most powerful account, and it's able to utilize all the resources, so it has the highest privilege. So once we issue in the username root, right, we can press enter, and it's going to ask for the password. Unlike Windows, you're not going to see, you know, the this too much here. So it has to input password with the capital PASSW0RD. And then we're gonna go ahead and click login. So it's gonna load my desktop after I log in. And where do I get this password information? If you go back to your instruction, that's located here, okay? So we completed with the login for the Kali. And what it's gonna do is gonna have you click on the terminal icon, which is at the top right here, okay? So what that is if you, let me get back to my Kali here. I would click on the terminal here to open up the terminal. And in terminal, it would say your user account at, and then the machine. So if you're using like Linux and Raspberry Pi, it would say your user account, like Pi user, and then the machine name. So here's the terminal. We can issue the command. And for our command, they have us in step 5, put in gparted. So what we're doing is we are going to use the application to look at your disk storage, which is your hard drive, right? Your drive, that's for that Linux system. So if we just simply put in gparted, one word in the terminal. So as you put this right here, basically it launches gparted as the application. And this application gives us the overall list of partitions or drive that were created for this machine. And so here what you can see is, I'm going to run through this real quick so you can see. For Linux file system, right, you would see that it would use ext4. For extended, you would create a partition for swap to be able to swap. Sometime we would create a home, right? So it all depends on how we would set up the machine. And by default, right, we can have it using, this is a type of file system that Kali Linux would use. And this is the size that's allocated for each of the partition, each of the section for this operating system. Okay, now we have a little bit of unallocated space here, and it shows you the user interface. So it has you click right here, right, to look at, so you can navigate through and see different section of that drive. So now what we will do is we will take a look at this right here, and it says after you access the gparted, it opens up. So your SDA is the actual Kali, the OS, okay? And with that, it needs additional section on the drive in order to function. Now we wanted to do the SDB, so on the right hand, top hand side, you're gonna click that section and you're gonna look at the other 20 gigs, a different drive. And we're gonna look at the SDB. And with that SDB, what we will do is we will make a section in that SDB, right? And be able to make it where it's for FAT32. So when you look at the SDB, you will unmount it and then recreate it for a certain type of file system. So let me go and show you how that is. So we went and clicked the arrow drop down right here. We're going to choose the 20 gig SDB. And as you notice, the SDB1 is for Android with the Android SDK for the mount. What we'll do is we're going to go ahead and right click and we're going to unmount it. Okay. So we would disconnect it at this point so that way we can make the modification to that drive. So the takeaway from this is before you start modifying and creating any type of drive, especially for Linux or even Mac OS, you have to unmount it and then you would take a look at that drive and be able to use section of that drive. Because if you mount it, it's going to show that it's going to be mounted, and for use, we don't want that. So it shows here that it has the usage, it's used in 10 gig approximately, and then a little bit under 10 for the unused. So what we see is, what they have us do is we would right click that SDB1 and then we would unmount it. So on Practice Lab, it gives you the instructions and you just simply follow the instructions. So once we choose unmount, we are going to go ahead and delete it because we will no longer use. So when you delete that drive that was previously mounted, you technically don't have access to the data that was previously on that drive anymore as the user. So what we will do is we will go ahead and unmount it and delete it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to my Kali here, right? I chose the drive here. I right click to unmount it. And then now I'm going to go ahead and right click and delete. So earlier when you had it mounted, you don't see all these options. So you have to unmount it in order to make the adjustment. And they do this for, so that way it protects the drive that's being mounted for use. Okay, and we can have options like resize, we can make it smaller or increase the size. We can change the label, we can give it a different UID. There's a lot of different things that we can do to this, but the lab calls for deletion. So with this, once you delete it, what will happen is the system, it's going to take that and it's going to say, oh, it's now available for other things. But we know that with hard drive is that when it does that, all it's doing is it's reusing that space for other data. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that the data that was previous there is completely gone. It's just reusing that space so that way if we cut it for, different into larger or smaller, right? It's just repurposing that space that was previously used for another type of drive. So now it would say that it's unallocated. That means that it's not assigned any kind of file system yet. It's just available. So for the next part, once you delete that partition, after you unmount it, you are going to make a new, you're going to create a new partition from that unallocated space, right? And then once you choose new, then you are going to give it a new size. So we would choose the new size and we would make it 4096. It's roughly 4,000, right? So I'm gonna walk you through that so you can see. So here, after I had deleted the original partition, after I unmount it, I can choose new. And then in new, what I can do here is instead of using the entire thing, I'm only going to use about 4,000 meg of it. So 4096. And then on the file system, I want to make it FAT32. And if you didn't choose it, you can delete it again and then remake it to the way that the lab instruction is. Okay. So that means I have approximately 16,000 meg or 16 gig that's left. And then I'm going to go ahead and click add. And what that will do is it's going to take that 20 gig and it's going to section it to the 4 gig for the FAT32. And it's going to leave 16 gig that's not being used for anything yet. Okay. So this application also keeps track of what you're doing here. So it tells you that here, and remember that we're using SDB1. So now we have that. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, So once, you know, if you didn't label it, so I didn't label mine, but you can add in the label. So let's go back and get that done. Right. And then you can change it again if you want. So the information, after I didn't put the label, it's already created. It didn't carry the label, but you can always delete it and then go back and recreate it and name the label. So that will be for our windows. So let me do it right for you guys so that way you can see. And then we want this as FAT32 and we want to use windows. Oops. Okay, so here we have it. We have Windows, FAT32, and we have 16 gig that's left. Then for the next part, after we added that drive, right, like what they screenshot there, for our new partition 1 shows there, okay? And it says that in order to save the changes to the file system, click the green check or the tick mark. Okay, so we gotta make sure that we click this on our, so we're gonna make sure that we click this. Okay, and then we have to click apply. Okay, so it has to save it. And you can look at details. So after we click the green check mark, we can save it. All right. So after that, after you click apply and you close, we can now close the G-parted window. So we don't need that application anymore. Okay. Now we will mount the disk volume. So you're still going to be in the SRV01, which is the Kali server. And you would go in to the terminal and you would type in fdisk/L. Make sure that this is an L, not a 1. L stands for list. So fdisk allows us to go and format, right? So the lowercase l needs to put there, and then it's gonna list your partition. So I'm gonna show you how that is. So I'm done with this. I close this here. I'm back to terminal, and then I'll do fdisk/L. Okay. Now, if you have typed this in erroneously, like a 1 or something else, it's going to throw an error and then you just have to retype the command. So this is the command line for Linux. And what that does is it's also giving you the similar details to what you've seen in Gparted earlier. But it talks about, you know, SDA1 here. It shows SDA2. And then look at the SDB1. To start, we have approximately 20 gig, right? And then it shows you the blocks. Okay, it asks you to look at the blocks. And then the type of system, FAT32. And then the ID is B. Okay. And then importantly up here, it tells you the total size disk, the bytes, the heads, the sector, the track, cylinder. And in forensic, we care about this because ultimately we really have to access the drive or create the image from, you know, from that drive and be able to get the data from it. Okay. So it have you take a look at the start, the end blocks, the ID, and the system information. And for me, you know, when I go through every single step, if I have important information, I normally screen capture for myself So that way, when I write up forensic report or analysis report, I can go back and see, so I don't have to recreate it again, right? So I can just quickly say that, oh, this is the information, this is the gig, this is the drive, this is the drive number, etc. So that's quick. So that's a good practice. Then what we're gonna do is we are going to make a folder. It's called the directory. So when you do mkdir/mnt, the folder is gonna call mnt from mount, and then another folder within it is sdb1. Okay, so if it successfully made it, it's gonna show nothing here. It just goes to the next one and waiting for the command. If it didn't, that means that you had typed in the wrong command, and you just got to make sure you check the instruction and retype it. Okay. Now, if you call it something else, and it's going to make another folder with that name that you give it. Okay. So that's to make the folder. After we make the folder and we press enter to make that folder, so it says after creating MNT directory, on the next prompt, you will edit etc fs tab file. So we would use leave pad. So you would type in leave pad. Okay, then press enter. With that, what that does is it's gonna open up like a text editor. And then what we have to do is we have to open the etc folder. It's like a file manager. So you open up the etc folder, you would scroll down and look for the stab file. Okay, so let me do that all steps here. So I open up LeafPad, and then I click on File. I'm gonna go ahead and click Open. Okay. Now, in the instruction, it tells you to click Open, File System, etc, and then FS tab. Okay. So we would go File System, etc, and then go down to F, it's alphabetized. F tab right here. So we're gonna go ahead and click open. Since there's a little delay. And then once you have it open, right, it says go to the end of the file and type in that line. So basically you're saying that on this drive, in these folder, right, we would have it set for the VFAT value to be 0. Okay, so it would look something like this. So you just add in that line at the end right here. Let me see if I can get mine to open. Sometimes I don't demo in virtual machine because we're using Zoom, and then on top of that, so hopefully it will do what it's supposed to. And so, but you can follow along, or you can continue with your task by looking at the instructions on practice lab. Got carried away with the slide, the glide there. So let me go up. Let's see why it's not responding. Are you guys having any luck accessing this? I tested this earlier and it was fine, possibly because there's a lag or something. ATC tab.d.
It's Professor Wynn. It's actually a little bit lower towards the bottom.
Oh, is it?
Doesn't have the D on at the end.
Oh, this one. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Let's see, it's aborted. There you go. Okay, so we would add this line, that line to this file. Okay, so you would type in this line, add it to that file like this, and then you would click save. So after you have added, it says to close it, and then you would clear your terminal and then reopen up Gparted. So what we're doing here is that we had edited the file, and in this file, you would also see the changes that's going to be mounted with that SDB1. So the folder that you created, that's going to get mounted with the SDB1. So at this point in step 12, you will mount it. So let me go and finish that for you. So that way, you know, I know some of you are already ahead as you get through this, but I'm just going slowly in case people have questions. Now, you don't have to complete it all in one sitting. What you can do is you can have it saved, but a lot of the time, now Cloud Lab, sometimes it resets, right? And that tends to be some of the issues. But what you can do is you can pause it and then you can come back to it. But this would work a little bit better if we actually have individual account, but this is an institutional license. So when you go through it, if you wanted to get through it and complete it, that's fine. And then when you come back to it, you can redo it if you want. So this is very useful and as far as practicing, and you don't have to create the virtual machine. Okay. Any questions so far? Let's see. I'm almost up for now, but let me see if I need to preview anything else. Okay. So a lot of the stuff you're going to be doing, mount and unmounting for the disk, the FAT32 disk that you created, and then what you're going to do is, because that mount folder that we previously created with this folder SDB1, we are going to change the directory to that. Once you have access with the directory, once you're in that directory, ls right here, right, is to be able to list the content. And what we can do is we can take a look at the content for that drive by mounting the folder to the drive and seeing that folder, accessing the folder. So when you do an ls of that, the content of the folder, what it's gonna do is it's gonna give you the output like this, okay? Total number, and then it's gonna tell you the timestamp, right? And if you have taken Linux classes before, used it before, you would see that it would tell you what this is basically rights, okay, permissions for access. So whether it's read, write, and who has it, the user, right? You would see root because you're logged on as root, you created certain things. So, or if there were files, content that was previously. So in this right here, what that does is it gives us what what's inside that folder, but technically it's connected to the drive. It's mounted to that drive, okay? Now, they have you make a directory called case1 inside the terminal, and you would create that folder and open up that folder by doing cd. Cd stands for change directory. So in this step 7 is when you would start using dd in Linux system to be able to examine it. Okay. Now, what do you take away from this is that, number one, we never examine the actual system itself. So what you do is you take an image of that, of the computer that you're investigating. And what you can do is you can use like Linux tool in order to, make a section of the drive and then evaluating the content of that drive, okay, from the image. So DD, it tells you here that in general, if you plan to use Windows Forensic Tool, examine a DD image file is created with this switch. So segmented the volume. It should not exceed 2 GB because it's FAT32. Remember, if you haven't taken hardware classes, but FAT32 is going to limit you. That's the maximum it's going to go, right? If you use NTFS, it's higher, but with FAT32, we can only have it as 2 GB as the file size limit. So the largest file that you can have is 2 GB. So what will happen is that you're only able to copy up to a certain amount from the suspect disk. So if you need to use DD command, right, it's better that you would split it up into different pieces. And they call this as letter extensions to the smaller segment because you're limited to that size. Okay. So here it shows you how you can adjust the segmented volume size. So you simply enter this, right, in the terminal like this. And you notice that they're using the file extension here for the gzip, which is gz extension. So after that, with the terminal, you're going to open up the computer, and then you're going to look at the system drive backup image file. Copy it, take it from that system, cut it, and then you are going to paste it into the folder for case 1. So what you did there is you are going to take that image file and then you're going to copy it to a drive that you cut, and you mount it to the folder MNT SDB1 case 1. So let's say that you have multiple cases, then you would create a different drive section on the machine, mount that to a folder, and then copy this case 2 image to a separate drive. We don't want to mix them, right? Because that can cause issue, especially with testifying or validating some information for our task here. Okay, so what they have you do is you're gonna paste it into, oops, sorry. You're gonna paste it into this, the file system. Now in the gparted, we open up gparted again, and then we're gonna unmount it. Okay, so earlier you had it mounted after you created, then you're gonna have it unmounted. Okay, so why do we need to unmount there, you think, after we had everything set up and added? So when we unmount it, it's become inaccessible to other resources. Now, for the second part to this is it's going to show you how you would take an image of a drive. So for example, if they confiscate computers from a crime scene, right, you have to tag and label and all of that. Now, when you investigate those computers, you would have to be able to take an image of that drive. So what they say here is that the document the chain of custody, or even when they confiscate hard drive or USB or SD, right? We want to take that drive data and we want to take an image of it. So on this one, it's going to use the Windows 8.1, and the 8.1 is here. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through some of the steps so we can save some time, but you can come back and do that. So now the folder that we're going to use is in C drive, work, data files, and chapter 3. Okay, so you have a folder, and it says out in real life you would have a C drive and evidence or some kind of folder that would be realistic. So the folder that we have is work, data files, and chapter 3. Okay, so for this right here, we just simply open up the file manager if you want to know what that is, right? C drive, work, data files, and then I think I'm misreading it.
Professor
It did
Nguyen,
say chapter. Huh?
is it too late to join the class?
No. You can join the class up until Friday.
All right, because
If that
yeah,
person wants to join the class, that person needs to email me to get the ad code.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
In that
then,
case, I'm gonna post it on the cybersecurity thing in my Discord.
right. Thank you. Okay. So with this right here, in the Windows 8.10, right? You would have, let me see here, using ProDiscovery proprietary run as administrator. So you would use the ProDiscovery Basic 64. Now, keep in mind that some of the lab exercises, they actually use license or open source. So if it's a licensed copy, you might be able to find the trial version, but if it's, sometime they have to pay. So when they created these images, they had to install all the applications that's needed for the course. So with and you will find there are many different type of tools that will be adaptable to Windows environment, as we mentioned before. So going back to this right here, let me see. Here's ProDiscovery shortcut. You simply right click it and then you would run it as the administrator. Okay. Now some organization, they would disable the administrator account for that system, but they would have a different account that would allow you higher privilege on that system. So you would be able to get access to that account. And that's more of a better practice than, but that account ultimately would have administrator privilege. So sometimes they don't use administrator account in general. So what we do here is we tie the access to administrator. So here's ProDiscovery. And this is one type of software, right, that would work with Windows environment. So in this exercise, this piece now, it shows you how you can interface the software and work with the software for Windows. So our files is located there, but what we will do is we would create a file name called in CHP03. Okay. So in this one, what you will have to do is you will have to, in step 3, you have to go to the capture image, source file, and then it's in the USB drive. That's going to be 5 gigs. So that is the image that we want to work with for this drive. So ProDiscovery Basic, in step 2, we have to click action, capture image, and then we're going to point to that source drive, right? And remember that even though we say it's the source drive, it's actually a copy of the original computer that belongs to the suspect or the original system. We don't evaluate the system. Okay. So in this part right here, so for the file name, we need to put down the file name in, right, CHP01 as you would, they recommend here. Okay. Any questions so far? So I'll retype that for you. And then if you have project number and description, you can add it. Let me see. They had asked you to put in. It's missing some steps there, but. Okay, so that creates a new file, right? And then you can go to the next step. And this step is gonna walk you through on how you are going to create the image. So it tells you to click the split option, split image dialog box, type in 650. That will be the equal size for that. Now with the different type of projects, then you would set up a different file for the different project and be able to go through it, okay? So as you go through this, what you will see is you will be able to capture the image, right? And the image format. And this tool allows you to put in your name and your information so it ties that to the report, okay? It tells you to add the password, right? So you put in your name, and so that way only you will be able to access that after it's being captured, okay? So for the lab, they have to use a generic password there, so that way you can always go back and view it. So the second part to this is to use Windows environment and use the ProDiscovery tool to capture the image or create the image from a targeted system. Okay. And the files that you create in ProDiscovery, it's gonna put it into a specific location, and you can always choose that to be placed elsewhere. Okay. Let's see. So after the image is captured, right, it uses the .pds file, and most application will have that. It uses its own file extension and only its application can open. Rarely that you would have cross-platform. So, and then you would have split volume across, because remember that we have the limited size option, so we have to split it up into various volumes. And those will be the .eve extension, so they have you view the actual file. Okay. Then you're gonna copy the disk. So after you capture the image, you can use the same tool to copy it. And then you can copy the source and point it to the destination. Okay. Now here, when they do the copy, it says click the write all 0. Remember how we talk about write protection, right? And how write protection, because even when you make a copy, sometimes it will update the stamp. So what we want is we want to write protected. Okay, so once it copies successfully, it will prompt you that. And it all depends. So in the larger sense, let's say you don't work with FAT32. What if you have the NTSF and what FS? And what if it's a larger server? The copy process will take a lot longer, and you got to make sure that your destination drive will have adequate space in order to store that. Okay. So once you complete the copy and it shows successfully, you simply exit. Okay. Now here, when it says that the action for this is that you can select the image from that, and then you can also use DD style format to format that image with a certain name. So with this here, it shows you how you can do that on Windows 8. And in the ProDiscovery Basic, it also have the DD component, like what you used in the Kali earlier, right? With DD, you have that option that's built into this tool. So you will see tools that will have overlapping feature like this. And then so once you have that, you can also proceed to the next part. Okay. So it has you do that in ProDiscovery. So after we have the images, after we have everything set up and with Discovery, with the file for our project and capture the image, right? So they're saying here that for this part, right, with the next step, so what we will do is we will have to do the preparing target disk for the acquisition first in order to proceed, okay? Now, after you have that, you would use your cable connection, you would plug it, and then you would be able to view it. So that will be some of the things that you can do in the future for the next part of the lab. Okay. Let me go back to page 8. I want to make sure I clarify something. So it says in this project, you prepared the 32 F32 disk partition using Linux. We did, you saw the example that we did as far as the lab, right? And then you would connect, follow the steps. So we did that. And then we use the DD command, split the acquisition using ProDiscovery. So that was basically the entire thing. So the first part is to create the partition, right? Mount that partition, use the DD, and also edit the FS tab file, use the DD in order to have that particular data on that mounted drive. Then you would access Windows 8.10 and be able to use ProDiscovery as the administrator, create a project file. With that project file within it, you would be able to capture the image. Once you capture the image, you would be able to copy that image and have the file split into various files, which is a .eve. Okay. So some of the things that they talk about here is also important. You can use Linux Live CD, or now we can make a live USB. You can use tool like Sift, right? Or Kali Linux has a set or def. So you're not tied to this particular instruction, however, but there are other options with the tool. So some of the preferred tool instead of DD, you would see that the DC FLDD can be used. Okay. And that can be designed for acquisition of data. So outside of DD, there's other flavor of DD. Now, importantly, we talk about checking the hash, because hash is going to tell us if the file has been modified or not. Okay. So now if it says here that when using Linux DD or DCFLDD commands, remember that reversing the output field of 14 to the input field if 14 of the suspect target drive could write data into the wrong drive, thus destroying your evidence. If available, you should always use physical write blocker device for the acquisition. So we want to actually utilize a tool, either physical tool or another software tool to write block. And you saw that there's some open source with this tool. Now, when you're using RAID, which is, the array of disks, that means that it's multi-disk that's grouped, okay? And you often see this with servers or larger systems. You would specifically use RAID tool, right? And with that, because the RAID firmware needs to be able to launch so that way you can access the RAID drive. So acquiring data directly from RAID server might be required. Okay. Now for the remote network, the tool for the required acquisition on the suspect computer, it says remote agent can be detected if the suspect installed their own security program such as firewall, which blocks it. And in many cases that they would use a firewall for connection for remote access. So that way we cannot, in general, see them. So when we investigate after the fact, you have to be able to identify if they use firewall or not to shield. Okay. Also on the top, I forgot to mention some of these. So this is added to your book because we're going to get more into this. So you can have raw data, you can have proprietary data, and you can have AFF data. So it says that most proprietary format and AFF store metadata about the acquired data in the image file. So what it does is it has a pre-listed, right, for that type of data. So far we talk about this imaging, right? So we would analyze the actual image from the disk, the file within it. We can do a disk-to-disk copy, okay? But make sure that we use the appropriate tools so that way it doesn't change the timestamp after copy. We would do a logical disk-to-disk or disk-to-data file. Now for sparse copy, we can copy larger sets of folders and file. Okay. Now in lossless compression, it says after the data, when the data is restored, unlike lossless compression, the compression can compress up to 50% of most data. If data is already compressed on the drive, lossless compression might not. Yeah, so it won't be able to compress anymore if you're already using compressed format drive or compressed format data on that drive. In the case if you have larger drive, it says logical or sparse acquisition might be necessary. That means that we would copy group of data. If it's a very large drive, then we can narrow down our scope and be able to drill down the data with the group of folders and files that we need. Okay. Now, contingency plan, you should always have enough storage. That means that when we travel for these cases or we're investigating, we should have more than enough disk space and backup drives available. So that way we would use it whenever it's necessary, because sometimes you don't know how much data you have to start. Okay. Now we should always have compressed and uncompressed. So in the case, if it's corrupted, we would be able to go in and access for analysis. We mentioned that we would do a write block device that would be useful for the graphical user interface tool, or in most cases, you're gonna see this as software tool that's affordable, okay? Now, it says test drive whether than the suspect drive to use the hashing tool to test drive to verify that no data is detected. So we want to use the utility and use the tool, right, and then examine it and also practice it, so that way it's a lot faster than actually using the suspect computer. So now the built-in tools, we talk about how that should be verified and compliant. Also, for your acquisition, your hash, right? You can use the SHA sum command or the MD5 sum command to check to see if it matches up. So Linux does come with already some equipped tool for this type of procedures. So you might want to consider more familiar with things like Kali Linux or other type of Linux releases for security. There are quite a few of them now, or you can customize your own virtual machine and add the tools that you need. So if you're more comfortable with one type versus the other, you can. So I think for Practice Lab, it gives you a lot of additional insights in the summary, and also it captures all the things that you did in the steps here. So if you wanted to take a look at the end, so instead of clicking that. Now, importantly, for those of you who have not used Practice Lab before, after you complete all your steps, you need to click Done, right? Now, let's say that I did half of it and I click Done. It's going to show up as 50% on the grade book. And it's going to stay there until if you want to, you can go back and finish it. So if you only did half of it, right? And even if you don't click Done, if you did 100% and don't click Done, it's not going to give you 100%. So the Done button is important to go through and click at the end. Now, if you only did half of it and you decided that that's what you're going to do, then it's going to give you the percentage that you complete. Now, it doesn't always sync right away, and I just talked to the engineer yesterday about it. We want it to sync more often, especially in the assessment area. But they say that, they will try to work on that where it's going to sync more frequent, especially with test score and score for Canvas gradebook. It's just they got to work with the Canvas people to make sure that their API is going to sync accordingly, and so that way it will update your grade. So that means that if it doesn't update right away, right, don't freak out. Just give it a little bit of time. It might update, in like an hour or so, or even longer sometimes. So if we have a lot of traffic coming through Practice Lab and Canvas, it might take a little bit of time to update. Okay. Do you have any questions for me? So this is how I can give you some exposure to the tools through the cloud environment where, we're not introducing crazy threats into your system, and also having you to download and troubleshoot and try to install. There will be labs that I work out that will work with Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, and I will share those with you as we go through the course. You will be able to use those, so you would be able to have more exposure to other type of tools. Okay. Now for the project, I intend to have you collect a USB, right? And then be able to utilize some type of full tool to examine that USB as, a forensic investigator. And then also to access a cloud drive and be able to pull the data from there and be able to examine the data. And then what you're going to do is you're going to write up a report on what you found, right, as an investigator. So you would at least have that exposure. And, I will give you recommendation on the tools. So as we go through this, think about the tools that you would use for your course project, or if you were to investigate real life, because this gives you a little bit of experience on how you would do that. Okay. And ideally, I don't want you to spend crazy money on buying tools or anything outside of the course. So if we can use open source as much as possible, we can. And unfortunately, some open source will not work with Mac OS. So think about creating a virtual machine or use a virtual environment for Windows or Linux, or, you know, so other operating system that will work with this. You know, in security, just make a virtual machine with Kali, and then you can use your own Kali instead of, you know, using the cloud environment. Okay. Any question? I will put in some tutorial link on how to make Kali Linux. And if you took Security Plus with me already, you already knew how to do that. You can go back to your CIS27 notes to be able to do that. Okay. So I will address question now. Otherwise, I'll let you do your cloud lab because I hate yapping along, and then, you know, I rather you pay attention to what you're doing. And I'll stay on to ask for question. You're welcome to stay on if you want. So I have Alma here, Ms. Chen's here, Chris is here, and who is Ginkgo?
Oh, sorry. I need to change my name on.
Okay, who is this? Is this David or
Devin Hardy?
Oh, Devin, hi, thank you. I thought I saw that last time, but I wasn't sure it was you or not. Okay, I'll go back and change your attendance last time because I wasn't sure if it was you. Okay. And Devin, you're welcome to, I know that you submitted a lot of the work from last week already, so you're good, right? And if you guys want to spend a little bit of time on the lab and the assignment for this week, that's okay. I had opened this until Friday. And don't forget, no class on Monday, okay? But if you have questions, you're welcome to hit me up anytime during the weekend or on Monday. I don't intend to go anywhere far on Monday, so I'll be able to access my email and answer your questions. Okay. And you are welcome to stay on for a while, but I will shut up now and let you do your lab. And if you have any questions, you can ask, or you can sign off Zoom and then you can do your lab, because it's going to take up your bandwidth being on video with me and doing virtual lab at the same time.
Did you tell them that they have to complete it? If you're going to do it, you have to do it all together. If not, it's going to give them
Yeah,
50%.
so I mentioned that if you don't complete it, it just gives you an incomplete score, like 50% or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
and then you have to start it all over again.
Yeah, so if you start it, make sure you complete it, because if not, even if you're halfway done, you're not going to be able to go back if you exit.
Right. It doesn't, unlike some of the other product, it doesn't store that state of the virtual machine well. I've used other cloud product when I was teaching for private institutions that it actually, you can click a save button and it saves it. But that requires individual login, and we don't have individual login using this particular license. Practice Lab does have that option if they buy individual account, which the school didn't. They bought a bulk account. That means that, you know, it's one license and as many people can access it simultaneously, and there's a limit, 250. But as like 25 students get on at the same time too, that virtual machine, it's gonna get really boggy. It slows down, and, you know, but no tool is perfect, and we try to make it where it's, you know, virtually adaptable so you're exposed to different things. So sometimes you have to be patient with the tool. And, you know, if it comes across error, let me know. I work directly with the region people and Practice Lab director, so I can send him you know, a quick update and they can fix it right away, or I can contact tech support. But you can also do that as well. The information for support and tutorial is here. So you can send in a support ticket, and they said that they do get back within 24 hours, and in the past they have. Okay. So the version that you're using is actually a little bit better than last semester, because last semester we still have a lot of complication in the other class, but hopefully, you know, we will have, you know, better throughput in this one. Other questions or anything? Okay. We're about 40 minutes early. If you like, you can stay on. If not, I wish you a wonderful night. Okay,
Right,
and
see you
then
next
I'll
week.
input. Thank you. Stop. Who are you barking at? Huh? Is that ours or is he keeping them?
No, he forgot again.
Oh.
The customer, they called the Instacart and I'm making some order. Huh? Does he forget all of this, man? I told him this shit, do they charge you for it? He said they don't, but he keep doing shit like that, they're not gonna.
Order from him.
Well, they can say you cannot work for us anymore.
If he forgot, he should just bring it back to them. He doesn't want to bring it back to them?
I don't know, he said that he can't for some reason. You're not teaching anymore?
I just finished.
We're gonna put that meat inside the fridge because he had it inside his car already. I'm pretty good. Dirty. What did you share? Pretty good.
AC. We're not enjoying the AC. Bring her inside. Why are you sitting outside doing this shit?
Shower pretty good. What's causing that pretty good? All these bug bites.
Maybe Josh should bring some food home later so he can eat it when he's home.
Unbelievable, man. These people were ordered for a family of 3 cases. 3 pieces done already.
Pork, beef. Hold on. I only got 2 hands. Family of 10. We're gonna cook some of that.
I want to go get the channel.
Leave it here.
Yeah,
I'll take
put it-
care of it. This is, you gotta like do something with this. It's a lot. It's like hundreds of dollars.
That's what I said. And just put it off.
I'll put this in the slow cooker and do something Peruvian with it. Here. What is that?
Chicken breast.
Yeah, I'm using $100. And us.
Boneless, skinless breast.
$33.
This one is $25.
What is that? Wow, ground beef. It's leaking. Don't put that in the fridge yet. Lay it down
Yeah, I'll put it.
in the box.
It's some shady shit, man. You can't be like, this is somebody else's food, man. Something wrong with that shit, dude. Get some Chino, man. Come to Chino, he probably enjoys some. This is too much for us.
No, I told Josh I'm gonna make it for him, and that way he can take home.
Yeah, but this is a lie. Fucking lot of.
Yeah, just take home and give it to his girlfriend. It's his food. Just put 1 loaf of bread on here for him, and he can, like, I'll make some meat for him to make sandwiches. You want to give it to Joseph? Then
I don't know,
call.
I guess I want to give it until I talk to Josh to clarify what is this
No,
and
I
how did it.
just asked him.
What?
He said that he still have food at home. He didn't just want to take home. So if you want to, I can split it up and give Chino some of it, and we can keep some of it. But we have to ask Chino if he even has time to come by.
I'll go drop it off in his house.
But what do you want to give him? Half of this, half of this, half of
I don't know, I
that?
want to give him something that we cannot use. It's just too much me, and I'm just sketchy because Josh, he's at the same time, he's done it before this already. I'm worried about that, like, the Instacart, hey, because he said that he has a lot of food. He called me when I was cleaning the pool that he forgot to give this part of the
That's
food
fine.
to this order. No, it's not fine. Until the customer complains, I was like, well, why don't you go back? Go back. I'll pick up some other order, but go back to the one that you were at. He doesn't want to go back to the one that he needs to say, hey, you complained, but here's the food anyway. I'm sorry.
Oh, whatever you figure out. If I have to cook some of this now because if you
But if you cook it, you're still gonna. Yo, what's good? Where you at? You doing an order?
Yeah, bro.
Yo, this is a lot of food, bro. How do you
No,
feel?
bro.
Oh.
Bro, ojalá que no me extienda mi cuenta, bro. I already hit him up. I said, I'm sorry. I'm saying, like, I don't know how the fuck I missed that shit, bro.
Is it like a full customer's order?
Yeah, she received half of it, but that's like $100 worth of food right there.
She received half of it. You gave her the half of it?
Yeah.
What would have been the rest of the half of it? Where was it, in the car? Cause
Nigga, the one that you gave me.
yeah, but where was it, in your car or what?
Yeah, it was in the back seat, but I usually put on the seat in the trunk, so it took off, I didn't realize. Oh, man.
But what would happen? Was it too much? Even though she complained, could you just have gone to the... Yeah, but you can still go back and say, hey, you know, I didn't...
She already placed a new order for the same item.
Right.
She don't want that.
He don't want what?
She doesn't want the one I have. She wants a new one.
But why? Did you tell? Did she tell you that or what?
No, bro, I don't have access to the customers. I only have access to
Right, but you could have gone to the house and said, hey, you know, because they might think that you sold this shit.
We highly advise you not to go there. We don't want you.
you're upset. That's fine, let him do his work.
I guess, bro, but I hope that they don't suspend your share with them, because yeah, this is how many times? Like a couple times? Damn, bro, this is like $100 worth of from Costco, right? Like 40, 30, huh? Damn, bro, you gotta be careful, my dude, like taking all the orders. What do you want me to do with all this food, man? I gotta give it to the homies. I'll get something cheap. Yeah. I'm gonna take some to Chino then, all right?
Yeah, whatever you want, bro.
Yeah, what time you gonna come through to work out? Dude, take care, bro. Hey, be focused, though, man. All right.
So what do you want to give your brother? Half?
I don't even eat that much meat like that, dude.
I can
Just
use
think, what can you use? This whole breast?
I can use chicken breast.
This whole breast? This one right here, right?
I can use
This one right here, right?
yeah. I can use
All
that.
of this?
I can use this for the dog and I guess I can use the chop. We can make that.
Which one do you use? Can you use this one?
This one we can use.
But
we
that's
can-
too much.
We can use
Just
half.
chop it.
I can
Just
use
half
half of it for the dogs, so I don't have to buy meat for them this week. And then this one, I mean, we can give half of everything to Joseph if you want. This one is pork, and this one is a pork shoulder butt. So, like it's like 2 pieces in here, 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like you can smoke or you can slow cook or whatever.
So how can you cut this in half?
You have to it's vacuum packed. I bought something like this before.
There's not even room in the fridge for all this meat, man. Have it down already.
can put this on the grill and then just grill it. We can put this. We can put this into here, and then I can make like the, what is it called? Res. Whatever.
Or can you, right when I was playing my guitar too, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead and,
What I can do, I can cook everything and then call Joseph to come over to get the food.
no, just give it to him. This shit, you don't want to throw it away. It's to 9/8/20. What's today? The 8th. We should sell by a couple of days. You don't have to cook everything. Just chop it up into pieces. Is there room in the fridge? No. This one, you can take this shit out already.
Josh, some of that he wants, some of that he told me.
Again, this fucking butter that is taking a lot of room. Do you even use this much butter?
Plus, Kayla and Joseph, they eat super healthy now, and like,
No, she don't be eating this shit. Is it religious?
yeah. Well, I'm gonna cook it so that way it can go into the container because raw meat doesn't last that long. So decide what you want to give to your brother, and then I can cook the rest. What do you want? You want to give him this whole pork shoulder thing? Fine, take that whole pork shoulder to him, and he can cut it up and open whatever. I'll use this, and I will put it in the in here. I will make the rice carne, whatever thing is. The cilantro and that I have cilantro in that. So that's this one I can just make the stew thing like what I did last time with the short ribs. And then if you want to give Joseph half of this, we can put it in the Ziploc and he can have some. But if we can use this one.
You think I might have been fired from this fucking job.
Slam dude's job, I guess. Do you even know if Joseph is home? Then you can take him the pork butt. If you don't take it, then I'll put it in the grill and I smoke it outside. And
I can try to tell Jimmy too to come. He's day off.
and give Jimmy the pork butt. He'll do something with it so he can put his family with it. The whole thing. I don't want to touch and cut in half of shit because technically it's just people don't want to touch it if you start like touching with your hands. So it's $33. That will last him the whole week, I'm sure. You can smoke, you can grill, you can do something with it. This I can use half for the dog and half for us. If he wants, you need to return his container to him too. The one over there, whatever. Joe, it's in the dirty sink already. I told you not to start touching it like that. Rinse it out.
Yo. Yo. Yeah, I can hear you. Where you at? Oh, you're writing? Oh, okay, porque te quiere decir que Josh ¿cómo se llama? Me dio un poco de carne, weón, que se había olvidado haciendo Instacart, pero es mucho, weón, y estaba pensando si tú quieres que recogerlo, esta carne, weón.
We don't have room in the freezer.
No lo puedo hacer, tiene que ser hoy, weón. Mira, acepta ahí el FaceTime. Acepta ahí, weón. Is that coming through?
Take a picture and send it to me.
Esta guada es 18 libras de
Pork shoulder butt.
pork shoulder butt. De la Costco, weón. ¿Ah? Ya no tenemos espacio en la fridge, weón. Está.
So if he doesn't take it, then I'll smoke it. And if you want smoke, then
I can take it to your house, dude, but eso va ahí, weón. Si lo que estaba haciendo es sacar, dice, weón. Le traigo otra más carne, weón. ¿Cómo te olvidas haciendo eso? ¿Te lo llevo para Techantin o qué? Dale a mi jato entonces y lo llevas para tu house. All right. Ahí te lo guardo, vale.
What do you say?
He says he's riding.
It's busy?
And he's gonna fix riding in Sycamore Canyon, just around here. So he's gonna go to his truck and then he's gonna call me.
Even if you give it to them, he's gonna have to ask Kayla or himself to cook it. They're not gonna have time.
Cool.
Because Kayla, she does meal prep all the time.
He doesn't, he cooks this shit by himself. You need to put it in the fridge though.
There's no room.
So put a bag or just like that?
Yeah, why did you take that bag off? I don't
But it came
understand.
out.
No. You take it out, you start looking at it, now it's all wet. So put in a better bag over there. Go get a part, like a one with a handle.
We have room for the rest of this. I leave this out, you're gonna cook that today or?
Yeah, right now. Don't put, if you come tomorrow later, I can give you some too, but go find his,
Right now it's right here,
Container.
right here.
you know, here to end of it, we don't give it back to him.
This probably up this thing kind of weird. I just say.
Or Joe, do you want to eat pho or do you want to eat the Peruvian food? Joe. I was gonna make fall, but I was like, too hot. They don't put potato in this, right?
Poor girl, she's always having bugs like.